Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a simple truth that too many people still refuse to accept. Tariffs don't hurt the country that imposes them. They hurt the country that pays them. Every time politicians in Washington cheer about punishing China with tariffs, what they're really doing is punishing American consumers, American businesses, and the American economy. China isn't footing the bill, you are. Every tariff is just another tax hidden behind a false sense of nationalism. But here's the hook most people miss. While Americans drown in higher prices and weaker purchasing power, China is playing the long game, and gold is their weapon of choice. Tariffs are always sold to the public as weapons of economic war, as clever tactics to punish foreign nations that supposedly take advantage of us. But here is the truth that almost no politician dares to admit tariffs are nothing more than taxes, and you are the one paying them. They are not collected from Beijing. They are collected at the ports of Los Angeles, Houston, and New York. They are not weakening China's economy as much as they are weakening yours. The next time you walk into a store and notice that prices are higher, you are witnessing the hidden cost of tariffs. And the irony is that the very people these policies claim to protect, the American worker and consumer, are the ones who shoulder the burden. If your household were struggling financially, would you raise your own taxes? Would you make life more expensive for yourself and your family, pretending that it was going to strengthen you in the long run? Of course not. Yet that is exactly what Washington is doing to you under the illusion of economic patriotism. Tariffs are dressed up in the language of strength, but in reality, they are weakness masquerading as power. They are a politician's shortcut to sound tough while hiding the fact that they have no real solutions for the deeper structural problems facing our economy. Now here is where the motivational truth comes in. Once you understand that tariffs are not tools of power, but instruments of deception, you reclaim the power that Washington tries to take from you. Because the moment you stop buying into the illusion, you can start preparing for the reality. And reality is where wealth is preserved, where freedom is maintained, and where independence is truly built. Every dollar you lose to tariffs is a reminder that the government will always look out for itself first. But every step you take to protect yourself, to save smarter, to invest wiser, to look beyond the promises of politicians, puts you ahead of the game. Tariffs are marketed as a way to teach China a lesson. But what lesson is China really learning? They are learning that the United States is willing to punish its own people just to pretend it is winning. They are learning that our leaders would rather score political points than confront the unsustainable debt, the out of control spending, and the dependency on cheap money that are truly weakening America. And while our leaders are stuck in this cycle of denial, China is moving strategically, quietly diversifying out of the dollar, quietly buying up gold, and quietly positioning itself for the world after the dollar loses its crown. You, on the other hand, cannot afford to be quiet. You cannot afford to wait. If you accept the fact that tariffs are simply taxes, you will begin to see clearly that your government is not protecting you. It is draining you. That clarity should motivate you to act. Protect yourself the way China is protecting itself. Do not be lulled into complacency by speeches about toughness or headlines about victories. There are no victories in a trade war where your paycheck shrinks, your cost of living rises, and your savings buy less every year. Every time Washington raises a tariff, your freedom to spend, to save, and to invest is reduced. That is not strength. That is theft with a patriotic mask. But the real hook here The real opportunity is this: once you know that tariffs are taxes, you also know that you can fight back not by changing Washington, but by changing yourself. You can choose not to remain a victim of their policies. You can choose to protect your wealth in assets that tariffs and politicians cannot devalue. You can choose to stand outside the system of endless manipulation and inflation. Tariffs are not China's problem. They are America's problem. They are your problem. And the moment you stop pretending otherwise is the moment you begin to take charge of your financial destiny. Don't wait until the shelves are bare or the prices double before you wake up to this truth. Don't wait until the tax disguised as a tariff drains you completely. Act now, prepare now, and don't let their illusion rob you of your future. China is not thinking about tomorrow. China is thinking about the next decade, the next century, the next era of global power. While American politicians are focused on the next election cycle, China is focused on the next empire. That difference in mindset is everything, because it determines who is truly preparing for the future and who is stumbling blindly into it. When Washington boasts about tariffs or short-term GDP bumps, it is playing checkers, celebrating a move that looks good in the moment but has no lasting strategy. Meanwhile, China is playing chess, planning several moves ahead, sacrificing pawns if necessary, but always keeping its eyes on the board's endgame. And here is the uncomfortable truth: the United States is losing not because China is stronger, but because China is smarter in how it positions itself. Think about the way China responds to U.S. aggression. It does not panic, it does not lash out, and it does not waste energy on hollow victories. Instead, it quietly rebalances its economy, it steadily reduces dependence on the U.S. dollar, and it accumulates gold like a nation preparing for a monetary reset. You see, while Americans are told to celebrate temporary wins, China is accumulating permanent advantages. They know that the U.S. economy is built on debt, on stimulus, on a Federal Reserve addicted to money printing. They know that this house of cards cannot stand forever. And so they are setting up the next foundation, brick by brick, with assets that hold real value. Americans are being sold the illusion of strength while China is building the reality of strength. And when the illusion collapses, it is reality that will rule the future. Ask yourself this: are you living in illusion, celebrating headlines and promises, or are you building reality for yourself and your family? Because just like China, you have a choice. You can think like a short-sighted politician, or you can think like a strategist. The United States government wants you to believe that tariffs are victories, that trade wars are leverage, that deficits don't matter. But China knows better, and you should know better too. Deficits do matter. Printing money does matter. Devaluing your currency to prop up consumption matters. And when the bill comes due, the side that has been saving, preparing, and diversifying will be the side that wins. This is why the lesson is not just about geopolitics. It is about your personal economics. Don't be fooled into playing checkers with your wealth, making moves that feel good today, but leave you exposed tomorrow. Be strategic. Think about the long game. Ask yourself, if China is moving out of the dollar and into gold, why aren't you? If China is preparing for a world where U.S. dominance is no longer guaranteed, why aren't you preparing too? This is not about following China. It is about learning from the fact that empires rise and fall, and the winners are always the ones who positioned themselves before the fall became obvious. The United States is still rich in resources, rich in innovation, rich in potential. But potential means nothing if it is squandered by leaders who think only in terms of elections and polls. The motivation for you is to refuse to follow that same shallow mindset. Don't think like a voter who reacts every 2 or 4 years. Think like an investor, like a strategist, like someone who sees beyond the noise of the moment. Because the truth is, the moment is not where wealth is built. Wealth is built in foresight, in preparation, in anticipating the collapse of illusions before they crumble. China is not waiting for America to collapse, to act. They are acting now, and you must do the same. Don't celebrate checkers' moves. Master your own chessboard. Build real value. Own real assets. Protect yourself from the mistakes of short-term thinkers. Because when the game changes, and it will, the ones who prepared in advance will inherit the future, while the rest are left with nothing but excuses and regrets. Currencies can be manipulated. Central banks can print them endlessly. Governments can debase them. And politicians can promise you that their paper will always have value. Stock markets can be inflated with cheap money. Debt can be masked as prosperity. And numbers on a screen can make you feel rich. But there is one thing that refuses to play along with illusions, one thing that stands outside the world of political promises and monetary experiments: gold. Gold does not lie. Gold does not bend to central bankers. Gold does not need to be bailed out. And every time its price surges, it is sending a message that the world is beginning to lose confidence in the lies that hold up the system. When you see the price of gold rise, don't just think of it as a commodity ticking higher on a chart. Think of it as the truth breaking through the fog. It is a signal that the world is waking up, that investors are starting to realize the dollar is not invincible, that central banks are not omnipotent, and that real value can not be printed out of thin air. Gold is not simply another investment. It is a mirror reflecting the weakness of everything built on false promises. And here's the hook. Every ounce of gold you hold is not just wealth. It is truth you can touch. It is a statement that you refuse to put your future in the hands of those who have already proven they will destroy it. History proves this over and over again. Every empire that believed it could outsmart reality by printing money or debasing its currency eventually collapsed, but gold remained. The Romans clipped their coins until the empire collapsed. The Germans inflated the mark until it was worthless, and people carried wheelbarrows of paper to buy bread. The United States is following the same script, with a Federal Reserve that creates trillions out of thin air and a government that spends like there is no tomorrow. But gold doesn't care about the script. It doesn't bend to political cycles. It simply stands as the same ounce of wealth it has always been, waiting for those wise enough to recognize its signal. And here is where the motivational power lies. Most people ignore that signal until it's too late. They dismiss gold when times look good, only to chase it when crisis erupts. But winners don't wait for the crisis to confirm what they already know. Winners understand that gold is not about chasing returns. It's about protecting reality. It's about stepping outside the illusion before the curtain falls. You don't wait for the storm to build your shelter. You build it while the skies are clear. And when the winds start to blow, you're not scrambling. You're safe. That is what gold provides if you act before the crowd. Politicians can lie. Central banks can lie. Even markets can lie for a while. But gold is the one truth that refuses to be silenced. It's the canary in the coal mine of global finance. When it rises, it's warning you that the system is breaking. And if you ignore that warning, you're putting blind faith in the very people who created the danger in the first place. This isn't just about owning a medal. It's about owning independence. It's about saying you won't let your life savings be destroyed by policies you can't control. It's about standing outside of a system that punishes savers and rewards debtors. Gold is your way of saying you won't play their game, you won't buy their lies, and you won't sacrifice your future for their short-term schemes. Every time the price of gold surges, it's a gift. It's the truth knocking on your door, telling you to wake up, to act, to protect yourself. The question is, will you listen or will you wait until the truth can no longer be ignored and the opportunity has already passed? The dollar has long been held up as a symbol of American strength, the currency of global trade, the reserve asset that underpins the financial system. But what most people don't realize is that its strength is a carefully managed illusion, not a permanent truth. The dollar has been propped up by decades of trust, by America's reputation, and by the fact that no other currency seemed ready to take its place. But beneath that facade lies a dangerous reality, a government drowning in debt, a Federal Reserve addicted to printing money, and a public convinced that this can continue forever. The truth is the dollar's time is running out, and the clock is ticking faster than most people are willing to admit. Think about what happens every time there's a crisis. The Federal Reserve steps in, cuts rates, pumps liquidity, prints trillions, and Washington spends money it doesn't have. Each time they tell you it's temporary, that it's necessary, that it's saving the economy. But what they're really doing is hollowing out the very foundation of the dollar. Every new dollar created makes every dollar in your pocket worth less. Every round of stimulus, every rescue package, every deficit that gets piled onto the mountain of debt is just another nail in the coffin of the currency. And here's the hook. You don't see the collapse in one dramatic moment. You feel it quietly, slowly, as the cost of living climbs higher, as your savings buy less, as your future becomes harder to afford. This is why no paper currency in history has ever survived unlimited abuse. The British pound lost its dominance when the empire crumbled under the weight of debt and war. Before that, other nations saw their currencies destroyed by the same arrogance America shows today. The belief that they could borrow without consequence, print without restraint, and demand the world's trust indefinitely. But trust is fragile. Once it cracks, it is nearly impossible to rebuild. And the dollar, for all its history, is no different. You are not powerless in the face of this decline. You don't have to go down with the dollar just because the politicians say everything is fine. You don't have to accept the illusion that your savings are safe in a system designed to devalue them. You can act before the collapse becomes obvious. You can protect yourself with assets that don't lose value every time the Fed opens its printing press. You can choose to step outside of the lie and into reality. The people who thrive when currencies collapse are the ones who saw the signals, who didn't wait for permission, who took responsibility for their own wealth. Every time the government tells you the dollar is strong, they are trying to convince you to ignore the weakness. Every time they boast about stability, they are covering up fragility. And every time the Fed claims inflation is under control, they are buying time while the problem gets worse. If you listen to their words, you will be blindsided. But if you watch the reality, the rising debt, the endless deficits, the surge in gold, the global shift away from the dollar, you will see the truth. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The motivation here is not fear, it is opportunity. When one currency collapses, wealth does not disappear, it moves. It moves into real assets, into stronger hands, into the accounts of those who prepared. If you position yourself now, you won't just survive the decline of the dollar, you can thrive in it. You can be among the few who didn't believe the illusion, who didn't fall for the promises, who understood that time was running out and used it wisely. The dollar's decline is not a distant possibility, it's an ongoing reality. And the choice before you is clear. Do you cling to a currency whose time is running out, or do you prepare yourself for the world that will emerge when the clock strikes zero? The answer you choose will determine whether you are a victim of history or one of the rare few who saw it coming and turned it into an advantage. Most people look at crisis and immediately feel fear. They see instability, they see chaos, and they panic. But those who truly understand history, those who pay attention to the signals, see crisis for what it really is, opportunity in disguise. Every major shift in the global economy has created two groups of people: those who lost everything because they trusted the system, and those who gained everything because they positioned themselves before the collapse. The truth is, wealth doesn't disappear during crisis, it changes hands. And the critical question is whether you will be on the losing side or the winning side of that transfer. When gold begins to surge, it's not just numbers on a chart, it's a warning sign, and at the same time, an invitation. It's telling you that confidence in paper promises is crumbling, that the system is faltering, and that those who recognize it early have a chance to turn crisis into fortune. Think about this hook. In every panic, in every breakdown, people who were prepared didn't just survive, they thrived. They used the fear of the crowd as their advantage. While others were running out of burning buildings, they had already found their safe exits and were ready to rebuild on stronger ground. The average person waits until it's too late. They wait until inflation is obvious, until prices have already doubled, until the headlines finally admit what was happening all along. But by then, the opportunity is gone. By then, the crowd is scrambling for what little remains, paying any price for safety and usually ending up with nothing. But those who acted earlier, those who trusted signals like the rise of gold rather than the words of politicians, are already protected. They are positioned to grow while others shrink. That is the difference between fear and foresight, between panic and preparation. Crisis is the ultimate test of vision. Do you only see what is right in front of you, or do you see what it means for tomorrow? When markets collapse, when currencies weaken, when governments scramble to contain what they caused, that is when assets rooted in truth, like gold, rise in value. And if you are on the right side of that equation, you are not crushed by the weight of crisis. You are lifted by it. That is why the wealthiest families and the strongest nations are the ones who think long term, who build for the storm before the clouds even gather. In calm times, almost everyone looks like a financial genius. Stocks are rising, money is cheap, and it feels easy to win. But when crisis hits, that is when the illusion shatters and we see who was prepared and who was merely floating with the tide. Gold does not reward complacency, it rewards foresight. It rewards those who understand that prosperity built on debt is fragile and that real wealth must be anchored to something real. And this is where your choice comes in. You can view crisis the way the crowd does, as something to fear, something to deny, something to hope the government will fix, or you can view it as your chance to step ahead of the herd. The herd always loses in crisis because it moves too late. But individuals who act early, who step out of the illusion before it breaks, always find themselves stronger on the other side. You can choose to see opportunity where others see despair. The moment gold surges, the moment confidence begins to crack, you are being offered a window to move, to secure, to reposition. That window does not stay open forever. And when it closes, you do not get a second chance to stand on the winning side of history. That is why you must act now, not later, not when the headlines finally wake up, but now, while the signal is clear and the opportunity is still within reach. Crisis is not the end. For those who are prepared, it is the beginning of something far greater. The only question is whether you will see it for what it truly is, or whether you will wait until opportunity has already slipped through your hands. By the time the average person realizes what's happening, it's already too late. That is the cruel rhythm of financial history. The crowd wakes up only when the crisis is undeniable, when the headlines scream, when inflation is eating away their paychecks, when gold has already doubled or tripled in price. But at that point, the opportunity is gone. The wealth has already been transferred to those who acted early, to those who saw the signals and refused to wait for the crowd's confirmation. The truth is simple. The winners in every economic upheaval are not the ones who react last. They are the ones who move first. Markets don't reward hesitation. They reward foresight. Waiting for everyone else to agree with you is the fastest way to lose. By the time the herd is charging into gold, into safe havens, into anything real, the price will already be out of reach. You don't build wealth by following. You build wealth by anticipating. And anticipating means acting on reality, not waiting for the illusion to collapse before you finally believe what was true all along. Think about it. How many times in history have people ignored the warnings until it was too late? In Weimar Germany, ordinary citizens clung to the mark until their life savings couldn't buy a loaf of bread. In 2008, millions believed the housing market was unshakable right up until the moment it collapsed. Today, Americans believe the dollar will remain king forever, even as debt explodes, deficits widen, and global confidence cracks. The writing is always on the wall, but most people don't read it until it is written in flames. By then, it doesn't matter. Preparation only counts before the panic. You have a choice that the herd refuses to make. You don't need to wait for permission, for validation, or for a government official to admit what you already know. You can act on the truth now. You can position yourself ahead of the curve while assets like gold are still accessible, while the dollar still has a veneer of strength, while the window of opportunity is still open. Acting early is not just about protecting your wealth. It's about claiming independence from a system designed to betray you. The hook is that when the collapse comes, the crowd will look at people who prepared and call them lucky. But luck has nothing to do with it. It is not luck to see signals. It is not luck to understand history. It is not luck to choose reality over illusion. It is foresight, discipline, and courage. And those who take those steps now will not only protect themselves, they will be in a position to thrive while others are scrambling. If you wait until the headlines say the dollar is collapsing, you are already trapped. If you wait until inflation feels unbearable, you are already behind. If you wait until the average American is rushing to buy gold, you will pay 10 times the price for the same ounce you could have bought today. That is the cruel irony. The crowd always waits until the cost of waiting destroys them. But you don't have to be part of that crowd. This is not about timing perfection. It's about refusing to be late. You don't need to predict the exact day or month the dollar cracks. You only need to understand that the trend is inevitable, that history has never spared a nation that abused its currency. the way America is abusing the dollar today. And once you understand that, you realize that hesitation is the most expensive mistake you can make. Act before the crowd, and you hold the future in your hands. Act after, and you'll be left with regrets, excuses, and losses you can never recover. The choice is yours, and it is staring you in the face right now. Will you step ahead of the herd, or will you wait until their panic becomes your prison